Heed and bear witness.
Now you get this straight.
Where are our guns?
Enough is enough! I have had it with these motherfuckers!
Howdy ho, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about every single armor set that Download 2 has to offer, and what they're good at, bad at, and etc. I'm just going to be talking about them in general. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it, starting off with the worst in the game, that being the good old medic set. The medic set is one of the worst in the class for a multitude of reasons. Reason number one is the damage increase is not entirely that good, and more or less focuses on yourself rather than an actual weapon category. Secondly being is half of the stats themselves are not entirely really good on Nightmare difficulty. And that's pretty much it. For one, the medic is one of those classes where it's better off to be combined with other armor sets. On its own, it can be quite effective against like human enemies, but that's essentially it. As for against the volatiles or any other big boys, it can be somewhat effective, but it's going to leave you in a very vulnerable position, considering the fact that medic doesn't really necessarily provide you a lot of resistance in the first place. While sure, it does provide you with some bit of damage resistance with its passive skills or passive stats, it is not going to really help you sustain a lot of damage if you're playing on Nightmare difficulty specifically. But what are the stats that it provides? Firstly are like health regeneration speed, and as well as healing effectiveness, damage increase towards parkour, and as well as you're able to get some bit of stamina reduction towards parkour. But the only ones that you really need to focus on are healing effectiveness and as well as damage resistance. Like I said, the damage increase towards parkour attacks is a little bit misleading because look at certain skills or aspects like vault kick and as well as drop kick. Those are from the combat skill tree. And would that necessarily be considered a parkour attack? I'm not really sure. And consider the fact that a lot of attacks, or specifically being like unarmed attacks, do like randomized damage where sometimes they deal like 50% of the enemy's health or like 80% of the enemy's health instantly. It's kind of a bit of a misleading, so that extra bit of damage that you get from parkour attacks, quotation marks, is not really that necessary. The only stats that you really need to be focusing on are healing effectiveness and as well as the damaging resistance towards either the day or during the night. It is possible to get both day and night, so that's pretty good. The healing effectiveness just pretty much allows you to heal more with a single medicine, which can be pretty good for both veteran and new players, as it allows you to use less medicine for the sake of more healing. And because you're using less medkits, you're not wasting away more honey or the flower. I forgot what it was called essentially, but either way. The damage resistance, if paired well with other classes, it can be quite effective, especially with the tank. And that's it. Again, medic on its own is really damn bad, mainly because of the fact that you don't really have a damage increase towards a very specific weapon class, which can leave you in a very vulnerable position. So yeah. And also another problem is the fact that some people have claimed that the healing effectiveness on its own does not necessarily work with other players and only works for yourself, which is, I'm not really sure if it's an actual thing, but if it is, like, damn, that's just depressing. Like, fuck you, teammate, you're not getting more health, because screw you, that's why. But either way, yeah, only stats you need to be focusing is, like I said, healing effectiveness and as well as damage resistance during the day or night. You're not exactly tanky, but that extra bit of resistance is going to help you on certain occasions, but not as much as like Brawler or Tank is, so yeah. Ranger is a high skill, high reward type of class, and it's one of those things where it should only be used is if you're very confident with only using ranged weapons. The big problem about the Ranger class is two reasons. Number one is that the fact that it does not provide any damage increase towards firearms, and secondly is the fact that half of the stats are very useless on Nightmare difficulty specifically, and thirdly is you are very fragile. I know I probably said like two reasons, but there's a third. Anyway, shut up. Anyway, so, what exactly does it focus on? It primarily focuses on providing extra damage increase towards bows and as well as crossbows, but I'm not sure if it works with knives and as well as shurikens. I could be very wrong, but I didn't really notice much of a difference on my own, so please let me know down in the comments if it actually works with throwing weapons in general. So, yeah. But what are bows and crossbows any entirely good? Yes, they are, and the crossbow specifically is very overpowered. If you're very skilled with the crossbow, you're actually able to kill the goons, demolishers, or even volatiles for that matter, with 4 crossbow bolts to the head, or even 5 for that matter. But because the crossbow is a very precise weapon, it can be a little bit annoying where whenever you miss a crossbow bolt, that's like 20% of the enemy's health just not gone, if that makes sense, essentially. Like, Ranger should only be used is if you're very skilled with the crossbow or with the bow. Bows are not entirely damage-dealing weapons because their damage are very terrible, and they're more or less used as a utility, mainly because of the exploding arrows and as well as the shock arrows. Shock arrows allow you to stagger a lot of enemies with a single arrow, and exploding allows you to knock enemies on the ground, allowing you to either maneuver around or grab something important. Shock arrows just more or less focus on staggering a huge crowds of enemies without dealing any much damage, and that's it. Again, bows should only be used for utility purposes, and crossbows should be used as a way to kill larger enemies, because Ranger is a very fragile armor set, and it doesn't provide you any armor besides its base armor value that it already gives out, and that's it. And one hit from a volatile, you're already on death's door, and do not try to fight the enemies head on because it's going to leave you in a very vulnerable spot. So yeah. As for like the other stats that it provides, recognition time is useless. The survivor sense, like effectiveness, as in like duration, and as well as range, is fine on lower difficulties, but on nightmare difficulty it's useless because survivor sense is like really just guttered in every shape and form. Like you cannot even see where the volatiles or any of the other enemies are, which is a really fucking stupid thing, Techland. Like, come on. Also, I forgot to mention, remember when I said that certain stats don't work on the medic tree? Yeah, the health regeneration doesn't work on boosters. That actually only functions with your passive healing whenever you're low on health. And again, nightmare difficulty doesn't allow you to passively heal some of your health back when you're very low, so that's another bummer thing that Techland removed for some fucking reason, which is a very stupid thing, but I'm not going to dive deep into it. I probably should have added it earlier, but honestly, I don't really care. But let's be honest, it's not really that much big of a deal. Let's be honest. Come on. Is it really that much big of a deal? No, it is not. Anyway. So now let's actually talk about the other two armor sets that are really damn good in the game. Those being Brawler and as well as Tank. Brawler is a very simple and straightforward armor set. Provides you with some bit of resistance, good stamina regeneration, as well as stamina reduction, and a good damage increase towards a very solid weapon class, that being one-handed weapons. So, yeah, the damage resistance that it is able to provide is either towards infected or towards human enemies, and is also able to provide you with some bit of stamina regeneration speed, stamina reduction towards melee weapons, and that's essentially it. Those are the core stats that the Brawler is able to give out to you, and that's it. As for like the weapons themselves, they're pretty damn good on their own, but I will talk about them each. The Brawler is the second tankiest armor in the game, as it provides you with a 47 armor set in total, if you are at max level. Although there is a specific like Dallas mask in the game where it provides you with a 20% damage increase towards one-handed weapons at the cost of losing some bit of armor and as well as some bit of resistance that you normally would get with the artifact level Brawler headset, essentially. So yeah, but let's talk about each of the weapons and what they're essentially good at in a very quick session. One-handed knives deal the least amount of damage compared to the other one-handed weapons, but makes it up for it for having a very fast attack speed, and is able to hit multiple targets with a singular swing, but unless they're armored or blocking your attacks, then it's going to bounce off very quickly. And the problem about the knife is that it only has one modification slot, so you have to be a little bit cautious on how you fight. Against like one singular target, or against like a few groups of like light enemies, this thing is phenomenal because of its ability to hit multiple targets. But because you have a shorter range, you have to get closer to the enemies, which leaves you in a bit of a vulnerable position where the enemies can sort of surround you or split up and hit you much more easily. Knives should be used against like 1v1 scenarios against like larger targets, or be used in small groups of like virals or biters for that matter. One-handed sticks deal the least amount of damage compared to the axes and as well as the machetes, but makes it up for it for being a blunt weapon and having 3 modification slots. And blunt weapons have a higher chance of staggering and stunning certain enemies, allowing you to either perform executions on them or allow you to perform vault kicks on them in some way or another. I'd say sticks are better off to be used against human enemies. That little less damage that it has is not really that much big of a deal, considering the fact that there's a lot of combos that you can do that does more damage compared to swinging normally. So yeah, as for like the modification that you can equip in any of the other melee weapons I'm going to include, that's up to you, honestly. I'm not going to like give you any suggestions. Use whatever you want, use whatever you're comfortable with. There's no right or wrong, except for bleed. Bleed is terrible, stay the fuck away from it. Anyway, one-handed machetes are sort of in the middle ground between the axe and the stick, where it deals more damage than the sticks, but has a chance of either doing more or less damage than the axes. They have a faster swinging speed than both the stick and axe, and they don't really bounce off of enemies that often unless they're armored and as well as are blocking, obviously. Machetes should be good. It should be used against like a medium-sized targets, whether it be like two-handed renegades, normal renegades, or even volatiles for that matter, chargers, banshees, whatever. They're probably better off to be used against like medium-sized targets, like I previously said, because of their fastest swinging speed, and as well as their solid damage and being able to hit multiple targets with a singular swing. So that's a pretty good thing. Axes deal the highest amount of base damage compared to the others, but the problem is that it bounces off of enemies a lot more often and has a slower swinging speed compared to the others. Axes are perfect for 1v1 large targets because of their higher damage. So if you're able to land consistent hits without getting stunned or hit in any of that matter, then you're able to dish out of damage very quickly in a short matter. So yeah, those are the differences between all the one-handed weapons. They're all good at. The only problem I can really say about the Brawler is that it doesn't really have the same amount of like variety compared to the tank, and as well as the same amount of resistance compared to the tank, because volatiles are still going to be a big of a problem, but other than that, you're still quite tanky in your own ways, and boosters are a very huge help and huge plus side if paired well with the Brawler. But now let's go over with the best armor set in the game, that being the tank set. The one thing about the tank set is that it is a jack of all trades type of deal because it is able to gain stats from different classes. Specifically being, Ranger has like recognition time or survival resistance, duration or range increase. Tank can get that. Medic has damage resistance during the day or night. Tank can also get that. Brawler has stamina regeneration and as well as stamina reduction towards melee weapons. Tank can also get that. While Tank does have its own exclusive stats, specifically being damage resistance towards elemental effects, these are very much useless because they're not really that good on their own. So yeah, there's 3 different builds that you can go with the tank build, but it's a very much RNG reliant, which is the #1 big problem with the tank build. Firstly being is that you're able to build a high damage resistance tank build at the cost of losing some damage increase towards your weapons. Secondly is you can either rock the highest damage increase at the cost of losing damage resistance, and then there's the Knuckle Duster focusing armor or tank armor set at the cost of losing some bit of resistance and as well as damage increase at altogether, but not the same as much as like compared to the others. You do get some bit of that. So the tank provides the highest base armor value in the game and is able to allow you to survive certain breakpoints that the game normally would be able to kill you. On certain occasions, you're able to sustain like 3 or 4 volatile hits compared to the other armor sets where they're unable to do so. And if you got some good amount of resistance on your hands, then you're able to sustain a lot more punishment compared to any of the other armor sets, even if they got some bit of resistance here and there. So yeah, again, the big problem about the tank is that it is very much RNG reliant, so you either get like the best in the game or the worst in the game. Unlike the other ones where they're more straightforward and simple, tank is a lot more complex because it has a lot of stats that it's able to gain on its hands. So let's go over with the weapons that it is able to give out damage increase towards to. First being is Knuckle Dusters. The difference between the Knuckle Dusters and the knife is that the Knuckle Dusters are able to pierce through multiple targets with a single swing, but in a straight line compared to the knife where it is able to hit targets in a more horizontal way, essentially. And it is also able to perform a heavy attack a lot more quicker and perform windmills significantly quicker. So that's another trait about it. But they're good on their own hands, but they're very rare to find, and oftentimes when they're being sold on the shop, they're very much terrible, so you kind of have to focus on techland.gg on its own to get a very good Knuckle Dusters. You're able to get some good ones, but that's only through blueprints. As for shops, they don't really sell them in a good way. So yeah. But now let's go over with all the other weapons that is able to give out damage increase towards, so those being long weapons, two-handed weapons, and as well as polearms. Long weapons have a lot longer range compared to one-handed weapons, but shorter than the two-handed weapons and polearms. So let's go over with each of them. The long sticks are pretty much the same way as one-handed sticks in the game, lower damage and as well as makes it up for it for being a blunt weapon. Blunt weapons are able to stagger enemies a lot more frequently, yada yada yada. You get the gist of it. It's literally the same thing as one-handed sticks. Long axes are sort of weird, where they either deal more damage than long sticks or less damage than them, and they have a much more slower swinging speed compared to the others, but as well as have a unique attribute to it where the first hit staggers enemies or push them back a lot further compared to the other weapons, which is a very weird trait, almost as if you're hitting them with a two-handed weapon, which is very strange. Although that slow swing speed and low damage is going to really mess with you if you're not careful, so be careful of that one. There are 2 different types of long swords. There's the basic swords and as well as a katana. Long swords deal the most amount of damage compared to the others, but at the problem of being able to bounce off of enemies much more quickly or more often, and as well as taking more stamina compared to the others. I will talk about stamina consumption on every weapon in a little bit, but let's focus on this one. So yeah, higher damage at the cost of more stamina consumptions, and as well as able to bounce off of enemies. So that actually a little bit of damage can sort of help on certain occasions, but it's not really that much big of a deal. But it is pretty damn good. Katanas are the best long weapon in the game, mainly because of the fact that they have a good range and is able to hit multiple targets with a singular swing. And it doesn't take as much stamina compared to the other long weapons. So yeah, but sure, it does swing a little bit slower, but consider the fact that it has a very good swinging pattern, both light and heavy attacks. You're able to hit more targets compared to a lot of the other weapons, which is really damn good. It does have solid damage, more than the axes, sticks, but less than swords, but it is a really damn good weapon that's going to help you a lot. Two-handed weapons are the best weapons in the game, mainly because of their range, swing pattern, and as well as their bullshit damage. That is all I can say, but let's go over with each of them. Two-handed sledgehammers, the same thing as like long sticks and one-handed sticks, least amount of damage and as well as able to stagger more enemies much more frequently, but they do take the most amount of stamina compared to the others, yada yada yada, you get the gist of it. Two-handed axes either do more damage than two-handed swords or less, but they take less stamina compared to the others. And finally is two-handed swords with their highest base damage compared to any of the other melee weapons in the game, and take a little bit more stamina compared to the axe, and because of its higher damage, it is able to decapitate enemies a lot more frequent, the same way with one-handed axes with the Brawler together. Because of their higher damage, they have a higher chance of decapitating or cutting off a enemy's body part. So yeah, polearms are sort of in a weird position where they have more range than two-handed weapons, but they take more stamina than two-handed weapons. But they are also able to stagger enemies a lot more frequent and often than any of the other melee weapons that exist in the game. And they have a much more faster attack speed when it comes to heavy attacks, so that's a good thing. And because of them being able to stagger enemies more frequently, if you perform an executions on them, your stamina is not going to go away. For some of you that don't know, each time you perform an execution, your stamina will become infinite for a short period. So using that as an advantage is going to be really good. So yeah, stamina reduction, or I should really be saying, the stamina consumption on each of the weapons are different on their own ways. Unlike in Downlay 1, where they all have their own randomized handling, every weapon has a different stamina consumption. Knives and as well as one-handed sticks takes the same amount and the least amount compared to the others. Machetes take more than both the sticks and as well as the knives. Axes take the most amount of stamina consumption compared to the other one-handed weapons, but because of its higher damage, it is able to decapitate enemies much more frequently. Bows don't take that much stamina, so it's kind of forgettable, honestly. Crossbows don't take any stamina for obvious reasons, because you're just shooting it instead of drawing it out with your body and shit. Long sticks take the least amount of stamina. Long axes take more stamina than sticks, but less than the others. Long swords, specifically being like the normal swords, take the most amount of stamina but have higher damage. Katanas take a medium stamina consumption, the same way as an axe, but slightly more than the axe, but less than swords or the basic swords in some way. So yeah. Two-handed sledgehammers take the most amount of stamina, the two-handed swords are sort of in the middle ground, and two-handed axes take the least amount of stamina, and then polearms take the most amount of stamina. As for the knuckle dusters, they take the same amount of stamina consumptions as the knife. So yeah, all the downside about every single class is that medic is very fragile on its own and is not able to dish out huge amounts of damage, and is very much reliant on other armor sets because of the fact that it does not provide a damage increase on a specific weapon class. So it's more of a class that focuses on providing as a support or being combined with the other armor sets, like I previously said. Ranger is very fragile and requires a lot of aim on your hands, so that's a very big problem. If you're not precise and suck at aiming, Ranger is not for you. It is a very high skill, high reward type of armor set. Brawler is very simple and straightforward. The only problem is that it doesn't really have a lot of varieties to it. You're just kind of stuck with one armor build. As for Tank, it has a lot of varieties on its hand, but that's the problem of it. Because it has a lot of stats on its hand, the RNG can either be on your good side or on your bad side. Again, problem with Tank is it is very much RNG reliant. So yeah, that's the problem with each of the armor sets, but they're all good in their own ways. Because of the fact that I could consider the medic the worst in the game, that doesn't necessarily necessarily mean that it's like really bad in general, but ranking wise it is the worst. But these armor sets are good in their own ways, and they're all effective even if you stick with one armor set. Even if you play medic from start to finish, you're still able to do a very good job. But I'm just saying, ranking wise, medic is the worst. So yeah, up I gave you a very good brief and overview of each of the armor sets and how they function, what they're good at, bad at, and their stats, everything about the weapons, etc. I hope this gave you a very good insight, essentially. So, did I miss something? Probably, but I honestly don't care. But if I did miss something, please let me know down in the comments, and I will give my thoughts about it. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see each and every one of you next time. Goodbye, and take care of each other. Treat each other with respect. Show some love, kindness to another. We are one big happy family. Do not be a complete asshole to another. And I am out. So, get out of my house, shoo.